Still ahead, a Canadian law professor and former Trump campaign advisor and speechwriter, Frank Buckley, will join me to tell me why he thinks Canada actually might be a good place for Trump ideas to take hold. Stick around.
So the question, I guess, here, roughly, it's a Sinclair Lewis question. It's, can it happen here, right? Can Trump be exported to Canada? And I think my answer will shock you, at least I hope it'll shock you. My answer is, and you won't believe it, it's already here. Trump's already here.
One of the most asked questions Canadians have in this Trump era is, could a Donald Trump candidate emerge here in Canada? My next guest says Trump is in fact already here. Frank Buckley is a Canadian-born law professor working in the United States. He's worked for Donald Trump as an advisor, helped write some of his speeches, and Frank Buckley is here in studio. Nice to see you.
Thank you for having me.
We've talked, but not in person. So you said today that you think that Trump is already in Canada.
Yeah.
How do you mean?
Well, here's the deal. I mean, Americans don't know anything about Canada. Canadians don't know all that much about the States, particularly Trump. Canadians don't know much about Canada. That's the weird thing. What Canadians don't realize is that this is basically a very conservative country. So you have here an immigration system that Jeff Sessions would love. I mean, he's pointed it out as a great place. You have a K-12 system that Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education, would love. You have a tax system that Steve Moore, the economic advisor, would love. You have a rule of law system that Nino Scalia would have loved. I mean, you've got all this stuff. So the thing about Canada is what you have are very, very conservative institutions that underlay basically the social liberalism. So the social liberalism is basically supported by some deeply conservative institutions. Canada's in some respects like a teenager back in the day who leaves Mahwah, New Jersey on the bus to go into the village with his jeans freshly pressed by his mother that morning and will go back to Mahwah that night, slumming as it were. I don't put that down. I think Canadian social liberalism can be quite noble. I think it's hard to, for example, watch the videos of the Syrian refugees coming here without being moved. But let's remember who's paying for it. And who's paying for it, for example, is a very conservative immigration system. Canadians can afford to be more generous with respect to refugees, precisely because generally the immigration system is one that helps Canadians. Entirely different in the United States. And so what you have in the States is a frustration with a bunch of laws that don't work. And I think that, at base, there's a constitutional difference. What you have in the States is a separation of power system where you can't change things.
There's a difference, though, between saying Canada has a conservative underbelly, small c conservative underbelly when it comes to many of our policies, and that there is a growing sense of rage and populism that's about to bubble up and turn into something else, which is sort of what happened in the United States. So,
yeah, funny, I didn't notice, but hey, I'll take it from you.
Okay. Well, what do you think happened in the United States?
I don't think there's anything like that. I think that's silliness.
Okay. What happened
I think what's happened is there is a bubble at the top, a strong elite that has absolutely no knowledge of what's happening in the rest of the country.
That's pretty much what I said, that it's income inequality and people feeling disenfranchised in the United States led to people believing in the message from Donald Trump. Is that not what I just said?
Immobility is actually more what it's like. It's not inequality so much as the fact that for the first time, Americans no longer think their kids will do as well as they did. And I wrote about it in my book, and this, in fact, is correct. They are correct to think that. Canada, by contrast, is living the American dream. The American dream is wherever you are, wherever you come from, you'll do okay and your kids will do better than you.
So are you proving my point, though? My point is that we're not going...
I didn't see rage.
Pardon me?
You said rage.
Well, there was no anger? You didn't see anger in any of the rallies that brought Donald Trump to where he is?
You see a lot of frustration and justified frustration. But I don't think Americans are, say, rage-filled as compared to Canadians. I think if Canadians wanted seriously to understand America, what they should realize is it's very different when you have a country where you elect people and things don't happen. So you had the 2010 Tea Party election, but Obama's in the White House. You had the 2014 Tea Party, Obama's in the White House, things don't happen. It's that sense of frustration which leads people to say, okay, let's go for it and let's try Trump.
Right, but if your theory is that Trump is already in Canada, I'm still trying to understand where the proof point of that is.
Well, the proof point is that the policies that Trump would want are policies which are essentially in effect in Canada. And what I said is that Canada has...
He's getting rid of Syrian refugees, and we brought in 40,000. How are those the same policies?
Unknown to Canadians, Canadian liberalism is written on a palimpsest of deep conservatism. So what's behind it are very conservative institutions, and by the way, constitutional traditions that work a lot better than they do in the United States. And so what that produces is a great frustration, which you see in a person like Trump. Trump is different also in this respect. What Canada has in a parliamentary system is filtration. Filtration. You don't become prime minister without spending your time in the House of Commons. Mm-hmm. Whereas in America, what you have is a strong presidential system. You have a person who's elected without that filtration, and he, moreover, is the head of government and the head of state, somebody you're supposed to revere.
Yeah, but I guess my point is, I'm not sure I understand how you think that Trump could happen in Canada. You're saying policies reflect that, but you say Trump is already here. Where is he? How could that happen?
Yeah, I didn't say, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what I was saying was precisely the opposite of what you just said.
You said Trump is already in Canada.
In other words, what I said was his policies are in effect here. But I don't see a Trump-like character succeeding in Canada.
Okay, why not?
Because the policies are in effect already. Why do you need a revolution with respect to immigration when you've got an immigration system that a Jeff Sessions thinks is splendid? Why do you need a revolution with respect to K-12, where Americans do terribly and Canada does extremely well? Why do you need a revolution with respect to mobility when Canadians do so well already?
Right.
I mean, the sources of the frustration are absent in Canada, right? And as well, you have a constitutional system where you have to do it in the House of Commons. And that excludes the complete outsider.
Well, we also have social liberalism, though, that allows people to be given things, and a government that is trying to correct social inequality. Canadian ignorance over America is just astounding. The United States has a welfare system more generous than Canada. I know you don't believe it. It's true. America has 72 different federal welfare schemes. It has a host of state ones. In terms of welfare per GDP, it is, I think, the second most generous country in the world. Okay, so it does all that. When was the last time you lived in Canada, Mr. Buckley?
Last time I lived in Canada was about 25 years ago.
Right. So forgive me if I know more about the country than you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. That's Frank Buckley on Power and
Hope you learned something.
Thank you.